Okay. This is a little bit of review over something that we've covered before in a previous video, but I just want to kind of go in a little bit more detail and talk about these three different types of notations because we're going to see this in this upcoming week's activities. So it says write 1 million in decimal, exponential, and scientific notation. So we've previously talked about decimal and scientific. Decimal is just what you think when we write the number without any type of specific notation. So there's 1 million right there. There would be the decimal notation. Now, we also studied scientific notation as well, right? We said that we can take this and we can count how many times would we move the decimal place. And we would move it, remember the decimal place starts here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if we were going to use scientific notation, we would write this as 1 times 10 to the 6th power. Now, just a little clarification, sometimes you might see 1.0 times 10 to the 6th. That's the same thing, but if there's not a number, if there's just a 0 back here, we tend to just write it as 1 times 10 to the 6th. Now, the one that we haven't talked about that actually our calculator gives us a good amount of times is called the exponential. So, what you're going to see is if you were to do 1 million in the calculator, it actually would give you 1 million, but when we start to get to smaller numbers, we might get 1, and then what you'll see is e to the 6th. So what this e is the same thing as times 10 to the, and then whatever power. So this just kind of flips back and forth between these two different formats. If you see 1 e to the negative, or e to the 6th, that's the same thing as 1 times 10 to the 6th. So this is really just corresponding to times 10 to the 6th power. So now it says write 1 billion in decimal, exponential, and scientific notation. So let's start by writing 1 billion. So here, this is 1,000, right? That is 1 million. So we need to add 3 more zeros to get to 1 billion. And that would be the decimal notation for that. I'm used to doing the scientific notation, so let's do that one. If we count, we can count by 3s. We're going to move the decimal place from here 3, 6, 9 places. So this is 1 times 10 to the 9th power. And then finally, to write this exponential notation, we would just use 1e to the power of 9, which again tells us that e is the same thing as times 10 to the 9th power. Write 1 trillion in decimal, exponential, and scientific notation. So 1 trillion, we're just going to have to add another set of zeros. So here's 1,000, here's 1 million, here's 1 billion, and here would be 1 trillion. I'm running out of room here, but the decimal notation would be right here. Now let's just go ahead and try to write the exponential right away. Think about this. We're going to move the decimal 3, 6, 9, 12 places. So the exponential notation is going to be 1 e to the 12th power. Again, that e is times 10 to the 12th. And then finally, scientific would be also 1 times 10 to the 12th power. What does your calculator mean where it says 2.3e5? Well, that is just exponential notation, right? So that's going to tell us this is the same thing as 2.3 times 10 to the 5th. Or if we wanted to take this number and turn it into the decimal place, we know we would need to take this decimal. Since it's a positive, we're going to move it to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places. We fill this in with zeros. So that is actually 230,000 in the decimal notation. I'm just going to keep going. I know this video is going to be a little bit longer than they usually are, but let's just have one video this week because these are all pretty much following the same process. On your calculator, calculate 2.3 times 10 to the 5th times 6.78 times 10 to the 9th. Well, when I get my calculator out, I actually don't have any sort of exponential notation. So rather than do that, what I'm going to do is kind of show you guys how we would take care of this operation if we didn't have a calculator that had exponential notation. Now, there's so many different types of calculators in our class that I can't go through every single type. If you would like to know how to work with scientific notation in your calculator, just come talk to me in class or after class or in office hours, and I'd be happy to show you how to work with that. It's not too bad. So if we are going to do this by hand or the long way, I'm still going to use a calculator. What we're going to do is multiply these numbers. 2.3 times 6.78. Whoops. Sorry. 2.3 times 6.78. When I multiply those, I get 15.594. So we multiplied 2.3 times 6.78, and we get 15. I think it's at 524? 594. So 15.594. Now, we multiply those numbers, and then we are going to add the exponents. We talked about this. So this is times 10 to the 5 plus 9, right, would give us, 5 plus 9 would give us 14. So 15.594 times 10 to the 14th power. But we're not done here, because when you take a look at this number, it's not in scientific notation yet, is it? Because in scientific notation, we're only going to have one number in front of this. So I need to take that decimal place. We need to move it over one more. What that's going to do is that's going to move this exponent, that's going to move that exponent up one more as well. So the final answer here is going to be 1.5594 times 10 to the 15th power. At a certain point, we might round here, but we're okay with what we got right there. So when we multiplied the numbers, and then we added the exponents. When we divide, we're going to divide the numbers. So we're going to do 6.78 divided by 2.3. So 6.78 divided by 2.3 is, we're going to have to round this, right? So I'm going to round this to 2.95. So we're going to get 2.95. And then what we're going to do with our exponents is it's going to be times 10 to the, and we're going to subtract the 1 on top from the 1 on the bottom. So our final answer here is 2.95 times 10 to the 9 minus 5 is 4. All right. So these last two questions are just some basic general information. I encourage you to just take a look. We're going to be working with these next week because we're going to be talking about bytes and gigabytes. So which do you think is bigger, a byte or a gigabyte? Well, giga kind of implies that this is the bigger one, right? So in 1 gigabyte, there are 1 times 10 to the 9th bytes. So what would that be? 1 gigabyte, I'm going to just do giga, is equal to 1, and then we would have to move that decimal place 9 places. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 1 gigabyte is 1 billion bytes. And 1 terabyte is equal to 1, I'm going to use the exponential, e to the 12th bytes. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, thousands, millions, trillions, a billion, right? A terabyte is a billion bytes. So these are really, really big things. And I would encourage you to go Google how much, look at a terabyte hard drive, see how much that costs. And it's amazing to think about how big storage has gotten and how cheap it's gotten in terms of technology. So we're going to be working with these next week. I encourage you to go through this again if you're struggling. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and I look forward to working with you next week.